Hey, this is Patrick Sullivan. Welcome to my shop. I've made several small decorative boxes and cases for personal effects and treasures, but I was looking for something a little different as a gift for my son and daughter-in-law. They're both fans of Asian art and architecture, and I thought I would try to make a jewelry box in the shape of a Japanese temple. Now, the most arresting and characteristic part of just about all Asian temples is the elaborate curved roof. But I didn't want to just duplicate an actual temple. I just wanted to capture some of the graceful lines and style common to many marvelous Asian monuments. I did not draw real plans. I just started with a single preliminary sketch, but then made several small changes as I went along, so the final result is a little different from the drawing. First, I put together a box made out of quarter-sawn oak that forms the body of the temple. I did not miter the sides together, but instead cut rabbets in the two long sides to house the short ends. This results in a strong box that tends to have 90-degree corners without any coercion. Additionally, I wanted the vertical lines created by the thin exposed edges. I hate sanding the insides of boxes, so I masked all the edges of the joints to catch any glue squeeze out. The floor is captured in a dado on all four sides and is not glued in place. I trimmed the exposed end grain flush with the sides using a small sharp plane. Next, I made a frame that will form the working part of the lid. I cut a small lip that will fit inside the box to prevent any side-to-side movement of the top. Finally, I cut the top edge of the lid frame at a 28-degree angle. This is the angle of the roof, and it will come up over and over again. I assembled the lid frame in place in the box. This helps to ensure a snug and accurate fit. These pieces have to be mitered, and they have to fit well. The frame pieces don't have to be clamped because the box holds them in alignment, and so I just held them together with tape. The roof starts out as 4 pieces of curved molding that are mitered together. Unfortunately, you can't buy molding like this at the store, so you have to make it yourself. This is handwork, just like they did for thousands of years. First, I cut away the bulk of the wood at my table saw. Incidentally, I'm using American black walnut, a really nice wood that is readily available at reasonable prices here. Unlike Claro and English walnut, it has an unattractive gray cast to it before it's finished. But be patient, all will change. Now the trick is to plane away the remaining irregular surface down to the design lines. I have a spokeshave-like tool used for hollowing out bowls and spoons. It's an interesting and effective tool. However, like most round-bottom spokeshaves, it takes some practice to keep the blade engaged for long, smooth cuts, and I had some trouble maintaining an even depth of cut. I changed to a different tool for the second roof. I used a variety of small planes to get down to the lines, and then made a card scraper with a shallow curve that I used for the last bit of planing. The scraper really did a good job of ferrying the curve. I made a custom sanding block by gluing up some MDF scraps. MDF is soft and easy to shape into the same curve as the molding using a block plane. This made short work of removing tool marks and doing the finish sanding. Next, I needed to cut the miters. Unlike a picture frame which sits flat, these are tilted up, requiring compound miters, which are a little bit harder to work with. There are two methods. The compound angles can be cut on the table saw. If you don't do trigonometry for a living, don't even think about figuring this out on your own. Look up the angles. I'm including a link for a good online calculator. Set the blade angle to 19.4 degrees. Then set the miter gauge to 41.4 degrees. This will give the right cut for a roof angle of 28 degrees. However, there's a simpler method that seems a little bit more accurate to me. You simply tilt the roof piece up to its correct final pitch, and then cut a normal 45-degree angle with the blade straight up. Finish carpenters who install crown molding do this all the time. I made a fixture that fits snugly on my miter saw. It has an elevated back fence and an adjustable front fence. I cut a wedge with a 28-degree angle and trimmed it to the correct length to fit my roof molding. Then screw down the front fence so all the pieces will be held at the correct angle all the time. The saw curve in the front fence lets you see exactly where the cut will end up, so you can be very accurate with the lengths of each piece. Here's the dry fit. The last step is to trim off the tab of wood at the top edge. Okay, let's put the lower roof together. Even if your cuts are flawlessly precise, it's a challenge to hold these slanted miters in their correct position. If your cuts are off by a few tenths of a degree, or the length of the opposite pieces are not absolutely identical, then you'll have extra problems. I thought I could keep everything aligned and tightly fitted with tape. This was much harder than I expected. In retrospect, I think it would have been easier to clamp on glue blocks and then hold the two pieces together with a third clamp. You can only use PVA glue like Titebond if the miters close perfectly. If there's any gap at all, you have to use epoxy, which handles gaps very well. Apply tape to all the surfaces adjacent to the glue joint. This saves an enormous amount of tedious sanding. Once the lower roof was glued together, I could measure the exact dimensions of the openings for the second story. I then made a small box out of white oak to fit around this opening, using exactly the same construction technique as for the main box, except no floor. For the upper roof, I wasted away the bulk of the walnut on my table saw just as before, but I used a different method for refining the curve. I made a round bottom plane of the kind that used to be used to make cove molding. I also made a blade with a curved edge out of tool steel and hardened it. If you want to see the details of this kind of tool making, check out my videos on making small chisels. The link is in the description below. This plane does a beautiful job of removing shavings that run the entire length of the molding, and it makes it easier to get an even and consistent surface. I finished up with the card scraper just as before. Although these roofs sit at the same 28-degree angle as the lower roof, the miter saw front fence position is different because the width of the molding is different. Cut the 4 pieces in the same fashion and then glue them together. Again, mask the joints meticulously and then use epoxy held together by tape. The roofs are curved in 2 planes. We put in the first curve when we made the molding. The second curve is at 90 degrees to the first. Finally, the bottoms of the corners need to be curved upward just a little. The best way to introduce this second curve seems to be to cut thin shavings with a large, shallow, very sharp gouge. Don't rush to hog off chunks of wood. Patiently trim away shavings that are no more than 2/100 of an inch thick or 1/2 millimeter, and often much thinner. My experience is that just a hint of a curve in this direction makes the roof much more graceful. Once you have established the curve exactly as you want it, remove the tool marks with sandpaper, finishing up with 320 grit. There's lots left to do in the next video where I'll make the base and the feet, make a tray to fit inside, assemble the pieces, add a decorative third story, and apply finish. Please be sure to watch the second half of this series. It's available immediately. Just click the icon in the left corner to go directly to part 2. If you like this video and you'd like to see more, please click my picture in the right corner to subscribe. Thanks for watching.